Massimo Bacchus, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
Happy to be here, Kyle.
I am really excited to walk through this process today. You bring a really different energy and philosophy to the place that you work, and I'm excited. Would you please tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you're doing in the world today, and a little bit about your upcoming book, just to set the stage for this conversation.
Yeah, I'm a reformed smart jerk. Somebody who was too talented to let go from an organization and potentially too toxic to keep around. But I've spent 20 years working in executive and leadership development, and today I have a executive coaching business. And this book that I wrote is coming out in September, and it's been several years in the making, and it is much a labor of love as something that, as macabre as it might sound, a message that I would put on my gravestone. I believe what this book is about and the message in it with more conviction than I've ever had.
Beautiful. And I'm really curious, and these are probably well practiced and well chosen words. You said a reformed jerk or something, and I'm really curious about that, and also maybe why that was useful or seemed like a useful tactic for a long time, because I think that it would be an interesting place to examine.
Yeah, well, the reality is it's a myth. It wasn't really useful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that all of these myths are something that are created when we're younger, when we're kids. We're not fully formed. We don't have all of our faculties, our intellectual mind, our intelligence, our emotional capabilities aren't fully developed, and so we're trying to make our way through the world. I'm dyslexic, which means I've always been dyslexic, and that made the school system that I spent the first 2 decades, and for me it was actually the first 3 decades of my life in the educational system, and it felt like a war zone. I never really knew what was going on, and it decimated my self-esteem. And to counteract that, I put together different mechanisms to bolster myself up and to come off as confident and to use different coping mechanisms. And they worked for a long time, but as I matured into adulthood, it created habits and patterns around being defensive, the need to always be right, um, a self-belief that if I wasn't the best, then I was the worst, which is really foolish thinking. But again, I was operating with a model that was developed when I was a kid, and it did lead to great levels of success, but it also created a wake of eroded trust and damaged relationships and stress in my life that didn't need to be the case. And I think that we're all people are grappling with this as we try and find who we are as adults, and change the relationship to that scared version of ourselves when we were kids, and recognize that we are still that same person, and there are lessons from that. But now that we are capable, that we are resourced, that we are able to ask for help in ways that we couldn't before, that's an opportunity to change those behaviors. And so when I say that I was a smart jerk, it wasn't because I wanted to be. It was because it's what I had been doing for so long. And it took for things to break around me for me to wake up.
Well, beautifully told, and it's really exciting to hear, especially one connection between us. Susan Schmidt Winchester has been on this podcast as well. Told a story about being in an office and speaking about a therapist about this, and kind of projecting on there were all these other executives and leaders that espouse a similar philosophy to what you were describing or had a similar background, and she saw them as bears and these big big scary creatures and herself as a tiny little golden retriever puppy. And this story shows, like, in the same way that she saw bears and somebody, everybody is just compensating in their own. We're all kind of sad puppies being scared and trying to present as much as possible, especially I think in those very high stakes competitive environments. And what rings true to me in this is that it's what from your story is that what's common is there's some kind of story of not being good enough, and everybody's overcompensating in one way or another. And I wonder what the overall cost of everybody, kind of overcompensating in one dysfunctional way or another on a whole organization.
I think the cost of not finding a way to manage and have a healthy relationship with that yearning to be enough, that seems that it cannot be satiated by anything external, um, robs us from truly being present, robs us from joy, robs us from awe, robs us from learning, connection, relationships. And most importantly, it robs us from experiencing the fullness of what it means to be human, which is the highest highs and the lowest lows. Now, those lows are different for different people, or highs are different for different people. But like, to be human, to be alive, is to experience joy and sadness, despair and excitement. Like, that is the fullness of this experience. And the thing that shifted everything for me is that I first realized that I was suffering from the epidemic of I'm not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really a, I'm not enough if. And what most of us are wired towards, and what I certainly was wired towards, is that if I'm not enough now, I will be once I have something else: a title, a bigger team, a beautiful partner, a bigger house, a nicer car, more money, more prestige, more power, more hair, whatever it is that matters to you, then I'll be enough. And those are all externally contingent. And the metaphor I use is, if you ever eat Cheetos, my son's 10 years old, and I feel like once a week a bag of Cheetos comes into my house. I don't like Cheetos, but they're here, and I end up starting to snack on them. There is zero nutritional value in Cheetos, but they do one thing very well, which is make you want more. And that is what external validation is. You just want more. You get a promotion or you make more money. Well, guess what? Now you just want more money, because it's never enough. But if we can flip the script and find a way to validate ourselves, give ourselves that sense of enough from our own internal resources, then we are no longer reliant on the Cheetos that have no nourishment. Then we're filling ourselves with like real, whole, nutrient dense foods. And what that allows us to do is be our full expression of ourselves. It allows us the strength and resilience to be in sadness. Not that we want to be there forever, but feel it, experience it, accept it. It's a part of life. It means we're alive. Be there for other people when they're experiencing that too. And likewise, to be there for those that are experiencing joy, um, instead of the social comparison of, well, I don't like that person because they're too happy. We can celebrate that because we ourselves are full. And I believe that we all suffer from I'm not enough. Um, but I don't believe that we have to. I just think we need to learn how to address that for ourselves.
Hmm. And yeah, the opportunity cost of hiding within these things, or this story. I've examined this many times and see this as a common thread. You almost growing as a leader forces you to actually look at this and pull this skeleton out of the closet, however it got there. Because yeah, in one way or another, if you're feeling I'm not enough, then it likely means you're not actually you're scared to work on or be in the true visionary or leadership role or embody the most important parts about who you are and what you're doing, and playing it safe by doing something that you're pretty good at, which you maybe have a team member already in place there and you're kind of stepping on their toes, and creating these problems to have situations that you feel you have control over, and allowing you this sense of like, yeah, control and safety, instead of working on pushing the edges and being on the uncertain frontiers, which anyone at the top levels of leadership, your job is to be in the uncertain worlds and tolerate that and navigate and decide, so the rest of the teams can fall behind that.
Well said, Kyle. You know, the notion of control that's another myth. There are very, very few things in this life that we actually have control over. Um, and the desire for needing validation or to get enough from something external puts that on things that are out of our control. I'm only going to be enough when I get this external thing. Well, that external thing is out of your control. So you're setting yourself up to be disappointed, to fail, to not achieve that. Whereas the way we think, our thoughts, our mindset, how we manage and are mindful of our emotions, our actions, behaviors, our habits, those are things that are in our control.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and far easier said than done to control them, but it's pretty finite. And when you can link those things to sustaining and building a sense of self-worth and validation, you distance yourself from the need for other things to go exactly as you want them to be. And it allows for you to be strong in the ambiguity and uncertainty, which is there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you can see through that. And that's when vision and purpose come into play. And I found for me, the most fun I've had in my life is when I let go of the fear because I know I'm grounded in myself and I dream big, but I'm not at all attached to the outcome. That I'm able to pursue something and enjoy just the process of pursuing something that I deeply care about. Whether or not it works out, I get to enjoy the journey, the experience of trying to get there. And, you know, that's the most fun I've had as an adult, is doing those types of things.
Yeah.
I'm getting like goosebumps just
Do you
talking about it.
remember? Do you remember a specific time when that happened? Like one of those times. It's hard to remember because you were lost in the process, and so time passed by and you like barely noticed it. But do you have a specific time in your
Yeah,
life
I
where
mean,
you
I'm in
really?
it right now. I'm already working on the next book project, but to be honest with you, I'm not sure if it's a book or not. I don't know exactly what form it will take, but I'm researching something new in the space of leadership, and I have no idea what it's going to become. But I have a vision of what it could be, and I'm not attached to that. And so the entire process has just been, it's like I'm a kid in a candy store, and if a door gets shut in my face, I don't see that as a failure. I just go talk to somebody else about it because it is all driven by my own internal curiosity and belief that there's something here. And I'm either going to find out that there's something there and other people think it's valuable. I might find out there's something there and I'm the only one who thinks it's cool. Or I might
Mhm.
find out that there's nothing there at all. But it is just the pursuit. It is just this opportunity to go on this walk and see what I find. Um, and not have any attachment to the things that are out of my control. Instead, I get to be very mindful around how do I want to approach this project? How do I want to be with the partners that I'm working with? Um, how do I want to receive the feedback that people give me? I used to be an incredibly defensive person, um,
Mhm.
defensive about things that maybe others get defensive about, feedback from leadership or management. But I would get defensive if my wife said I loaded the dishwasher the wrong way, or if
Mhm.
she asked me too many questions about any innocuous topic. Um, I mean, it was gross how defensive I was. And
Yeah.
all of that was this myth of protection because I didn't feel like I was enough. And once I developed a practice where I can feel enough on my own, not better than other people, not worse, just enough, just worthy as any other human being, the defensiveness subsided. It went away because I didn't have anything to protect anymore.
Hmm. What do you think is unique or different about your approach or your philosophy compared to what most people are doing or how most people approach this issue that you're describing here?
I don't know if what I'm doing is particularly unique or special. That sort of thinking I find gets in my way.
Mm.
Um, but I have clarity of a belief, and I think that's rare. And the belief that I have is that our sole universal purpose in our life is to learn to truly love ourselves. And I don't mean that in a Pollyanna way or in a wooey, strictly spiritual way. I mean that in so long as we're living and breathing on this earth, every day is an opportunity to get better at learning to love ourselves, which means accepting all of our limitations and our fears, our mistakes, our regrets, our shortcomings, um, and embracing all of the things that uh, make us who we are, our strengths, our gifts, our talents, um, the gratitude of what we get to experience. And it's not a checkbox. It's not something that you do. It's not a certification. I don't think you ever master it. I think it is something you do every day, is continue to prioritize the relationship with yourself so that you can be your best self in relationship with other people. Um, and that may sound self-serving or selfish, and I don't think anything could be further from the truth, because it's not about being self-absorbed. It doesn't take the entire day. I don't spend all day thinking about myself, but I am very aware of, when am I hurt, when am I wounded, when am I hiding, and when do I need to make sure that I love myself so that I can be present and be honest, um, and be the type of person that I aspire to be. But that aspiration starts every day when I wake up, and it ends when I go to bed, and then you got to start all over again.
Awesome. So I think we've done a good job at laying out what exactly is at stake here. But I'm curious, and this seems to, if I were to reflect the perfect person for this book based on our conversation, the I Am Not Enough story is playing in. They're finding ways of external validation. They're defensive and hostile to any feedback, both in their, this is carrying over in their personal and professional lives. And they are trying so hard to hold on to control at the expense of actually being able to get anything done. Does this sound like a pretty accurate description of some of the highlights of somebody who would be perfect for this book?
Absolutely. And I think that we all express, um, we all seek validation or try to feel like we're enough in different ways.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a number of them, Kyle, but it also could be people pleasing, could be a yes person, it could be a
Mm-hmm.
workaholic, um, it could be somebody that needs to be the center of attention. Um, it could be that you're a wallflower. Um,
Yeah.
I I think it shows up everywhere. I think that it's universal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and part of what I'm trying to do with this book and with my message around this is to normalize it. If this isn't an indictment, this is the human experience. Um, and if we can normalize this feeling that, yeah, we all want to feel like enough, there's nothing wrong with that at all. The question is, are we going about it the right way? Are we going about around it the most healthy way? And through the practice of self compassion, um, there is a way that we can do this that doesn't harm others, it doesn't take from others, and it doesn't harm ourselves.
Perfect.
Um, and I think in the world that we live in today, um, that's a good thing.
Yeah. So, Massimo, I want to hone in on a specific story we can tell. So, as we start to explore this, I would love to find a point. We've got a good idea of where the problem zone is, what the unique angle is just by loving yourself first. Everything else comes into a better line. And
It sounds
then,
easy, right?
yeah, yeah, of course. And we're going to do it in 5 minutes. And then it's the result and what they want on the other side. This is what they would say if you could imagine the people who are reading your book but haven't read your book yet, but they want to feel grounded. And I do love the specific detail of being lost in the process because I think that that's exactly what these high achievers want to be. I think that's a beautiful thing. And then also no attachment. So that is a high performance kind of indicator right there. So does that all sound aligned? Is there anything else that would make for the promise, the benefit, the back end of loving yourself that should be mentioned in here?
No, I think you've got it well.
Excellent. Then um, you've tuned into your emotional self, and you've looked at these stories before. So I'm curious when you think of or I'm going to just read these words to you one more time, and just tune into what and when in your mind what stories are associated with these things of I am not enough, of seeking the external validation, of maybe a time where you were defensive with your management or something. Maybe there was a specific day where something that happened in management then carried over into something at home. And when you were truly living in maybe the most typical moment or the moment that you really decided something needed to change in this I am not enough story.
For me, I think it was always there, but I didn't know. It didn't have a face. I didn't know what to call it. It was just a felt sense. And when it came into clarity, it was labeled as defensiveness. Right? That I realized that um, the manifestation of me not feeling like enough was defensiveness. That's my flavor. And I went through a 360-degree feedback assessment. Uh,
Massimo,
yeah.
forgive me, but instead of saying what you did or trying to share the process with us, help me find a Tuesday afternoon where you were feeling this, or a moment where this happened, and a room that you were in that you were experiencing this.
Where I was experiencing I'm not enough.
Yeah. A typical day in I am not enough, a conversation in the office, something that happened in the boardroom, come home, and one of those moments that you said earlier were ridiculous with your wife, where you were not being the person you wanted to be.
It was probably April of 2020, just a few months into the pandemic. Um, and I didn't know what I was doing or what I was supposed to do, how I was supposed to be, what role I was supposed to play professionally in my organization.
Yeah.
Um, I found myself seeing other people uh, take action to, bail out the sinking ship, and I froze. I didn't really know what to do. Um, and I was present there and trying to help, but my hand was not, on the wheel. I'm mixing metaphors, but
Yeah.
uh, I was I was not present. I was not embodied in this time, and um, working remotely like most people at that time, and I remembered sinking into incredibly deep despair, uh, and that transformed into what at the time felt like a heart attack. And I was laying on my living room floor, uh, crying hysterically with my heart pounding so much that I thought it was going to explode out of my chest, with this sense of vertigo and spinning that I thought I was going to slip off the face of the earth, like slide off of my living room floor.
Mhm.
Um, and I felt utterly helpless and completely inadequate and not enough to do anything other than not fall off the floor.
Yeah. Was there a Zoom call right before that happened, or some kind of meeting, or an email, or
Probably, I don't remember. Um,
was the floor hardwood or was it carpeted?
it was carpeted, and I remember my wife came in and she checked on me, and she'd never seen me like this before. I'd never experienced anything like this before, and she was so kind and supportive, and um, you know, created safety, which I really needed at the time. She actually brought me a book. It was a Glennon Doyle book called Untamed, and she opened it up to a particular passage, um, and she just asked me to read it, and it gave me a moment to kind of catch my breath and stop crying. And um, essentially, what I read was that this is human, this is to be alive, and this will pass. Um, and when you're in a moment of a full on, anxiety, panic attack like that, um, to connect to it that I'm alive, that this is a part of the human experience, and that this will pass, was what helped me find like my footing again. I wasn't sliding off the floor. Um, I didn't necessarily snap out of it, but it was the first step, um, back to connecting to my own humanity. Uh, because prior to that, I felt so lost and so disconnected from even what it means to be human. I mean, that is the most fundamental thing that we are. That is the one thing we all have in common. That's
Yeah.
it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. 10 out of 10. Perfect moment. Great moment. Let's find the opposite. We were, if that was cold, we must go hot now. And now, knowing this, I'm going to ask you a question I asked you earlier. But tell me a moment when you were abounding with I am enough, and therefore you were in your best role as a leader. You were grounded and dreaming big, but also not attached. And you were lost in the process and performing at your best, and everybody was in your lane. Is there a specific time, as specific as that other thing? And there, I know that there are many, and we just need to pick one that truly reflects what we could hope for on the other side of this
Yeah.
process.
I think there's one moment that is the perfect juxtaposition. Um, and this was the moment that I first discovered that to love yourself was even possible, even something worth pursuing, because I'd never experienced it before. Um, I was at a retreat in Napa. It's called the Hoffman process. It was the fourth day of the 7 days of this retreat. And over the first 4 days, what I had slowly noticed through the different meditations and journaling and different practices is that there had been this voice in my head that had been there forever. It was this roommate that was just always there. I didn't even know, like the elevator music that gets stuck in your head and you don't know where it came from. Um, that voice started to become more quiet, and because the tone and the volume of that voice changed, I started to notice that it was there. That was the first time that I really noticed that it was there. And as that voice became more quiet, another voice emerged. And it was a voice of, um, I'm enough. I love myself. Here are the things that I love about myself that are positives. Here are the things that I love about myself that are not positives, in the sense that I accept them. Um, to be able to accept that I understood why I was defensive, because I was protecting myself, but I didn't need protecting.
So give me some details of like what was happening in the room around you, or
Yeah,
just now that you were feeling that, what you did differently.
I went for a walk and by myself, and I was just walking down this wood lined path, and I remember hearing the breeze and the rustle of the leaves, and I remember feeling the sun hit my skin and like warm me and warm my body, and what my senses were picking up was all high fidelity. It was I've never felt the sun that way before. I've never heard the wind in that same way, and I started laughing, hysterically laughing, like the type of laughter that we do when we're kids, and you laugh so much that then you start laughing at how much you're laughing, and it just laughing begets laughing, and your body hurts, but it feels so good. And I was all by myself in this moment, laughing hysterically, and it was euphoric. It was the most beautiful individual experience I've ever had.
That's what I'm talking about. That's great. Awesome. We have all the ingredients. Are you ready for your story? Are you ready for the magic trick?
Bring it on.
I can remember looking up at the spackled pattern on my ceiling, writhing and shaking around on the ground. It's a few months into the pandemic, and where I'm used to being in an office talking to a lot of people and really being able to see everything that's going on and control everything that's going on, I'm now detached from everything, everyone. All of the noise of my day to day work is now replaced by silence or occasional beeps of emails. And I'm wondering, who am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing anything at all? Everything that I used to draw value from, the promotions, the praise from people, everything was just severed. And I was at home by myself, and nothing that seemed to provide any meaning was there anymore. I wanted to change and do things and do better, but every time management, or now my wife, every time she had a suggestion, since I'd been spending a lot more time at home, I immediately get defensive and sharp and make things all the more worse. The more I try to control things, the more out of control I feel. And now here I am having a panic attack, just screaming and crying, shaking on the floor like a baby. Did this moment arrive? My wife comes in, this amazing patient woman, and sits down next to me and just spends a moment consoling and comforting me, and reminds me that even this is a human experience and what you're going through. This is life. And I sit there and think in that moment how many of the people that I'm working with and working for and are serving are having this exact same moment right now of uncertainty and feeling this. And I realize that this, even though the world's turned up on end, what's going on in my head right now is really something that's been there for a very long time. And it's just been agitated. And I realized on that day that something needed to change, not in the world around me, but in myself. And so I set out on a quest to figure out what it would be to be enough and what that would mean to me. And this took a long process of a lot of costly and painful mistakes. I had to unlearn a lot of the strategies and styles that were once touted as the best things to do and the best possible ideas for leadership, and open up my mind and my heart to new things and being able to express and understand what I needed to myself and to others. Now, this wasn't exactly easy, like I said, but there was no going back after doing that. And I can remember slowly over time starting to be more present with myself, starting to be more creative in my meetings, allowing other people to shine in theirs, and noticing how my team started to respond to me differently. And over the course of a few years, building on these skills and building, I found that I had totally transformed my life through relating to and leading myself better and becoming a better leader. I can remember this one day having a ton of spaciousness, a ton of time to be allowed and to go out and think and be at my best. And I started walking through this wood-lined forest and on this path, getting to enjoy the sun on my face and some fresh air and movement in the day where it was once always cubicles. And I just start laughing as if I had heard this joke for this first time, or as if I was being welcomed home back to myself for the first time, laughing and moving hysterically through this forest. And my body hurts and my cheeks are sore because it feels so good. And I look up and see the sun coursing through the trees. And what I realize has become possible for me is what I realize I want to create for so many more people. How many more thousands of leaders, of executives, of good people are facing this same problem, are being weighed down by this metal burden of I am not enough. And ever since then, I've been out on a journey to make sure that as many leaders as possible, just like you, are tapped into what makes them enough and acting at their very best so we can change the world together. There's your story.
Wow, Kyle, that was very moving to hear, to hear that back to myself. Um, Thank you.
Absolutely. You did great. You brought some really beautiful, juicy moments that tapped right in to what the audience needed. And you know your audience well. And this was all your brilliance and your moments just filtered through a couple of simple systems and ideas and frameworks.
What I think is interesting is that the two ends of these experiences weren't about being a leader or with a team or leading an organization or any of that. They were isolated moments of uh, having a human experience.
a human experience that is really common, and I can certainly relate to, even in a very different format of running my own business and creative work. But I've just like I've said, it's a process of leadership, of improving ourselves. We'll always need to examine this and lean into wherever this I am not enough is still hiding, so that we can serve and be at our best.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's a very powerful process you've come up with,
Thank you.
uh, to create that arc. And what really struck me is, um, what details in a story are most valuable to convey the message, and what is window dressing. And sometimes, as the storyteller, it's hard to differentiate what is the window dressing and what are the real compelling messages. And the things that you chose to share and not share help me kind of see the difference between, um, that was of substance versus filler.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about it. And a lot of the times we just want to add a few too many details, and if we're it's so hard because we're immersed in those stories. We're lost in our own forest. And yeah, just having somebody be able to cut it out really quickly and allow you to feel it and experience it. You don't necessarily need a perfect script written for you, but now you have a lens to view that story that you didn't quite have before, that allows you to use it and communicate that in a different way, which is really the beauty of this process that can be applied to a story like this, or even how do we teach from the stage, or anything like that.
Yeah, you're very talented, Kyle. You're very talented.
And you are as well. And I want to thank you for bringing everything that you brought to us today. And I would love to invite you. Do you have any closing thoughts for the audience and anybody's that's gotten to learn and experience you today? And where can we go to learn more about you and maybe get on the wait list for your book? I think it's on pre-order at least by now.
Yes, the book comes out September 10th. It's on Amazon for pre-order right now. The book is called Human First, Leader Second: How Self-Compassion Outperforms Self-Criticism. And I hope that people will go and at least check out the Amazon page and see if it interests them. There's a lot of information on there. Um, for those that are listening, they can find me on MassimoBacchus.com, and there's a link to sign up for the newsletter where there'll be more information about the book and upcoming events and additional resources. Um, but the question you asked about, kind of a closing remark is, what I express here today is very exposed, very vulnerable, and uh, I do not think that everybody needs to do that. They don't need to share their uh, their lowest lows and their highs with the world or with many people, but to make sure that they're at least sharing it with themselves and they're aware of it. And the reason that I do it, as uncomfortable as it is to talk about these things, is to try and normalize all this. Um, we live in a hyper-connected society where we are more isolated than ever before. And I know that I'm not the only person who's suffered in this world, but being able to talk about our suffering and our struggles, and being able to talk about um, our joys and our high points, helps us connect to one another. And that's what I think is most important with the message that I'm trying to create, is that um, we're not alone. It doesn't matter who you are. We all have one thing in common, and we're having a human experience. Um, so let's make it a good one.
What a great closing thought. And thank you for leading and being able to love yourself and have the courage to share those moments through that process. Massimo Bacchus, thank you so much for joining us on the Story Engine podcast today.
Thank you, Kyle. It's been a pleasure.